Hey, so I had such an amazing response to my last two videos that I decided to do another one. But I gotta tell you, right, that before I do it, I gotta get some things out of the way because I got quite a few comments about how attractive I am, and I'm a little I'm a little insecure about certain things, and so I decided, you know what? I'm gonna just talk about them so that I don't feel as vulnerable when I'm doing this. So look, right here, I call them the entrances, right? They want to meet up around here, but they haven't yet. And I mean, there's the crow's feet. I don't really mind them as much. What I don't like is this, the angry wrinkle that looks back at me. I don't like that very much at all. And I don't know, man. I just think that I look very tired. Probably because I have been. There's been a lot going on, and I may talk about that in another video as it relates to what I normally talk about, which is my sexuality. The other thing, and maybe the final thing I'll talk about, is just that I feel I look like I'm storing up nuts for the winter, you know, with these cheeks. I'm saying this all in good fun though, because I know that everyone's got insecurities, and we tend to be a whole lot more judgmental of ourselves than others are of us. Yeah. So this video though, I wanted it to be about my personal experiences with homophobia because I realized after my last video that I've never actually talked about that. I've never talked about how at school I was bullied. I had a friend who was more effeminate than I was, and we spent a lot of time together, and that drew a lot of negative attention. There were two guys in particular that I remember I would avoid walking by because they'd always have some horrible thing to say. And in Barbados, I think in general, the homophobia expresses itself verbally more so than physically. And because of that, people will say that there's no homophobia because they'll compare it to other places in which the homophobia is expressed more so through violence, right? But I think that the psychological impact of verbal harassment is or can be just as hurtful. I think actually that I suffer from anxiety in large part because of the fear of being in public spaces, the fear of being attacked in those ways, you know, being called a slur, because it's a small place, complete strangers feel entitled to, and not only because it's a small place, of course, but because of the Buggery law, which was removed from the statute books just last year, December 1st. So that made people feel emboldened to call people names just because homosexuality was criminalized, you know? So there was a lot of that. I mean, I wrote a short story about it. I bumped into a friend in town once, in Bridgetown, the capital of Barbados, and I remember a Rasta walking by. I say a Rasta, but a man with dreadlocks. And he said, wait, one of his two girls, which is another way in which homophobia will express itself. There's a policing of male behavior. You can't be effeminate. But the interesting thing about that is because masculinity is so performative, there are symbols of masculinity that aren't natural, right? So, you know, walking with a limp, that's not the way that you naturally walk. So if you don't perform your masculinity, many times you will draw attention, and men trying to police your behavior will call you a bulla. Now, that's the worst thing that you can be called in Barbados, and it is very effective in getting men to conform. So it oftentimes doesn't even have to do with sexuality, it just has to do with non-conformity. Anyway, I'm off topic. Back to how I experience homophobia. In general, in those ways, you know, if I'm wearing a shirt that's considered to be too different, then I might be called a bulla. Or if I gesticulate when I speak, I get too animated, I might be called a bulla. I have had an old lady come up to me and look me in the face and act if I was a girl. I have had shop attendants look at me funny, you know, not respond to what I'm saying sometimes, or they just laugh. They meet eyes with another shop attendant and they laugh. And one of the worst experiences I've had was I was at the beach with a friend and we were talking in the water, and suddenly there was like a splash behind me, and I thought that it was a fish, right? And I looked around in time to see a rock being thrown, a rock coming at me, right? And I managed to move in time. So there was someone who had decided that my friend and I were gay, or we were up to some funny business in the water, and decided to throw stones at me. And I think that was the worst expression of it while I was in Barbados.